Professor Wesley, what do you make of the deal? How significant is it?
Oh, look, I think it is a significant deal. Israel has struggled to forge normal diplomatic relations with its Arab neighbours for decades. The only real breakthroughs occurred with Jordan and Egypt back in the 1970s. So the fact that there have been two more Arab countries that have been willing to develop and normalise ties with Israel is significant. It's a big development.
And the other element that they've got in common is that anti-Iran prism, though, isn't it? So I guess there was that in common.
That's very much what has brought them together. But UAE and Bahrain are also two countries that are determined to modernise their economies, to become economic powerhouses, and the reach out to Israel for them will carry benefits if they're able to tap into, for example, Israel's high-tech sector, its substantial research universities and research institutes. They will benefit from it. So I think that there are real benefits all round from these agreements.
And how does it play? I mean, obviously it's not a massive issue domestically for Donald Trump, but it's at least something he wants to talk about. You know, in recent days, he's been pushed off his preferred agenda, so to speak.
That's right. I mean, this really confirms Trump's self-image of Trump, the deal maker, the guy who's unconventional, who can break through in places where others haven't been able to break through. That hasn't occurred on the other high-profile issues on Trump's desk. He hasn't reached a workable deal with North Korea, for example. He's actually thrown a deal with Iran on nuclear enrichment out the window. There's been a weak pause, if you like, in the trade war with China, but you couldn't say that any sort of durable deal has been on the table. I think this is late in Trump's term, an example that he can get things done, and I think it would come as a great relief to him to be able to demonstrate a foreign policy breakthrough at this stage.
Michael Wesley, I was interested in a really compelling piece by Paul Kelly, editor-at-large at The Australian today, and he writes that the deteriorating ties with China have a life and momentum of their own, and he concludes by saying that Australia has to basically curb the fatalism and put a new priority on trying to halt this vicious spiral. I asked the Trade and Tourism Minister about that point earlier. I'll play that and get your thoughts.
Well, there certainly shouldn't be an attitude of fatalism. China and Australia share a place in the same region of the world. We are both G20 economies, China the world's second largest, Australia the world's 13th largest. It is important that we find ways to engage, to cooperate, but also do so in a manner that is entirely respectful of each other and each other's sovereignty and each other's security and stability. That's the approach that Australia brings to bear on these issues.
So the point is, how do they manage that reset? Because clearly there are many in the government that want to see that happen, and there are many more in the business community and elsewhere that want to see it happen.
Look, there certainly are, and I think the relationship with China is at a really dangerous place where almost weekly we have developments that perturb the relationship even further, that arouse the ire of Beijing and that further damage the relationship. That's a really bad place for us to be in. It's certainly not where we want to be. And I think the Trade Minister is right that it's important that a note of pragmatism comes back into the relationship. How do you do that? That's a very good question, Kieran, because there are no mechanisms at the moment for making senior level contacts with the Chinese government. The Chinese government seems to have completely frozen out our ministers and our diplomats. So how we make that point and how we stabilise the relationship is a good question. I think we should be trying, and I'm sure we are trying, to use some of the multilateral meetings that are coming up, the G20, APEC, and others, to try and get some sort of a sidelines conversation going, to look each other in the eye and to say, look, let's try and put a stable floor under the relationship. And if we can't be close, if we can't be particularly friendly, how can we be pragmatic? Because it's a relationship that's important to both sides.
And Paul Kelly also made the point that it would be a mistake to fix relations by selling out to Beijing, but it is an equal mistake to offer nothing and make no effort to fix relations for fear of looking as if we've sold out.
Look, I think that's right, but I don't think that the government is doing either of those two things. I don't think it's going to make any sort of exaggerated apology to China or to try and mend fences. But I think in the statements of the Trade Minister and others, there is a pragmatism there. There's an openness to dialogue. There's a willingness to talk. And there is an obvious preference that we want to stabilise the relationship and get back to some sort of business-like bilateral relationship with China.
And Professor Wesley, just finally, do you feel there's sort of a holding pattern in a way? I mean, obviously we've seen this tit-for-tat situation going on, but broadly a bit of a holding pattern as the world awaits Beijing, Australia, all of us await the outcome in Washington and the United States.
Oh, look, I think in a way the relationship with China that we have has almost decoupled from the China-America relationship. I think that while there are elements in China that think that Australia is acting as it does because of what Washington wants, I think there's a sense that it almost doesn't matter who wins the election in November. There will be a tense and probably worsening relationship with China, between China and the United States. And Australia needs to make sure that its own relationship with China is stabilised, irrespective of who's in the White House in 2021.
Michael Wesley, thank you as always. Talk to you soon.